Hello again, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd of the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. Kat and Skylace are both stricken with the plague, so they are not with us tonight. So, Brian, it looks like it's just you and me this week.
Just you and me. I'm not. There was a song there, and I forgot the lyrics, so I'm not going to finish it.
I was about to say, you just sound just so thrilled.
It was. This is going to be a good gag. Brain said, "Not anymore." I was like, "All right."
All right, but how are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing all right. I'm here, kind of tired, but still here.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Now, how was your Thanksgiving? Get yourself lots of turkey and pie.
And a little bit. I had folks over. We had a good time. I don't see them very often. It's hard to travel up to where they are, so it was a good time to see them down. We had like I said, turkey. We didn't have pie. We had some cake. All that kind of good stuff. Watched a little bit of football with my dad. I took them out to eat a couple days later, and then they had to head back. So it was a good time had by all.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. I went with my mom and my sister up to see some family up in Westminster. And one of my cousins was there who hadn't seen me in like 15 years. And he didn't recognize me at first. So he came up to say hello. He hugged my mom. I was like, oh, hey, Cheryl, how's it going? Hugged my sister. And then I guess he thought that I was like my sister's boyfriend or something because he went and held out his hand to introduce himself. I was like, hi, I'm Jason. How are you? And then he stopped and I saw him kind of tilt his head. He's like, oh my God, Billy? Is that you? And I was like, yeah, who'd you think it was? So, and then his older brother came in, and I was like, all right, let's see how long it takes this guy to recognize me. So that tells me I need to get out more. My family have apparently forgotten I exist.
Getting out's overrated.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got a fun show this week, one that I've very much been looking forward to, and that's Netflix's The Punisher, which I'm pretty sure I've said a million times on the show. I am a huge Punisher fan. So this has been a very exciting time for me. So yeah, we got a fun show for you this week, but we are going to begin as always with the random topic of the week. And Brian, I've got a question that I want to put to you.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay. So this whole thing got started with a Penny Arcade comic that was posted last week, and kind of it's kind of spinning off our discussion later on The Punisher. But it was basically a riff on Polygon and their review of The Punisher. The way the comic basically played out, Gabe says to Tycho, hey, did you watch The Punisher yet? It got trashed over on Polygon. And Tycho's like, oh shit, that means we need to watch it right now. It's probably awesome. Because if Polygon hates it, then there's no greater indication of quality. And, I laughed at it because, I hate Polygon too. But then I kind of stopped to think about it, and I'm like, this isn't the first time that I've had this reaction to something like this, to where, somebody says that, they hate something. I'm like, oh, well, then I need to check this up. It's right up my alley. There's a guy on YouTube. His name is Jonathan McIntosh, and he's one of the his taste in games and in media is like the polar opposite of mine. So I know that if he does a review and he says that, like, say, for example, Doom 2016, quote unquote, glorifies guns and violence to a disturbing degree, then I know, oh shit, that sounds like a sick time, and I need to get in on this. So the question that I want to put to you is, have you ever had a critic where if they gave an opinion, they said that they liked or they didn't like something, you knew that you were going to have the exact opposite reaction? Like if they said something, if they said they hated something, you knew that you would love it?
No, not really. There's nothing in recent memory I could pinpoint to, and maybe just because the comic book industry doesn't have. I mean, we have critics and stuff like that, and their review sites and all of that. But because it's such one of those wide variety of people in there, is that I couldn't like pinpoint going, oh, if that person doesn't like it, I'll like it, or if that person likes it, I won't like it. So I don't know where this phenomenon, because you're not the first person that sort of mentioned this to me. So I don't know exactly where this phenomenon comes from. I don't know exactly how it's a personal bias, confirmation, or anything like that. So I've never really had it, but it's a fascinating thing to watch, just because I think a lot of people, and especially as you bring up Polygon's sort of slowly becoming a punchline to the internet community. So So yeah, they maybe for them it's like, well, we don't like this movie / book / comic or whatever, and I might go, no, it must be good. That just could be them being just terrible at what they do. I don't really know. I don't read Polygon, so
So you think it might be like
the best answer for you?
So you think it might be like Armand White syndrome?
Maybe. Armand White syndrome. Armand White, like he has his own separate issues going on. I think he likes to do it just because he likes to be different. You know, I'm different and special, but you're also wrong.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, Armand White is a film critic who, when Toy Story 3 came out and it had like unanimous good reviews, had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, he was the one asshole who came along and gave it a rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes just to be a contrary asshole.
And he's done it ever since, because I think he saw that he got attention from that. He's like, oh, this is how I will make name for myself. I'm like, but you're making your name for yourself for being wrong constantly. How does that happen? You know?
Well, like, because it's an interesting thing for me to think about, because, you know, we live in an age where, you know, thanks to YouTube and, you know, the various, you know, review, you know, it being basically for anybody and their brother to break into the quote unquote review scene, where we are spoiled for choice as far as critics go. So, you know, now, you know, it's kind of like a question of like, you know, okay, you know, are people following reviewers? Is it possible to follow a reviewer for having a bias that's similar to yours? But then the same token, you know, is a reviewer whose tastes are the polar opposite of yours also valuable as a tool for deciding what entertainment you want to consume? Because, you know, like I said, you know, if Polygon says they don't like something, or if John McIntosh says they don't like something, I know that it's probably going to be right. It's probably going to be something that's worth at least checking out for me. So,
yeah, it's really hard to tell, because like in my area, there's voices in a crowd, and it's a very large crowd, and everyone sort of has a voice. So no, I don't really think we have a person to go to like that is the definite person to talk to about if a comic book is good or not, because everyone has their own little thing, you know.
Yeah, and then kind of on tangentially, I seem to recall you telling me once that you were never going to give me video game recommendations again.
Do we remember why I said that? Because I might have, because I believe in it, but I don't remember why I said it.
I think it was you were doing a Let's Play of Transformers, Transformers,
Devastation,
the cartoon one, yeah, Transformers Devastation, and I just asked you how good it was, and you were like, "No, I'm not giving you video game recommendations ever again." And I'm like, oh, "What did I do?"
It could have been, I think, because we had those like recommend this, recommend that, and I think I recommended something that you shat on. I was like, all right, never mind. I'll go over here now.
Okay, all right. So, well, like I said, I don't recall that, but like, you know, I thought maybe that might have been something like maybe you knew that like your tastes were like the polar opposite of mine or something. I don't know. But anyway,
well, there is a little bit of that.
So anyway, oh, you know what? It was. I remember what it was. It was Minecraft Story Mode.
Right,
because that came out and you were really excited about it, and I was like, "What is this? What is the point of this? Why is this here?"
Yeah, it was like, "Isn't this great, guys?" You're like, "You're an idiot, Brian." I was like, "All right, fuck you too."
No, I didn't call you an idiot. I wouldn't call you an idiot because
that's how you made me feel, and that's the most important thing.
Well, I'm sorry, but you know, you'll be happy to know there's a postscript to that story. I picked it up over the Steam Autumn sale, so I am going to give it a try. So. Because Telltale's never done me wrong before. But anyway, putting the question to you guys in the audience, do you guys have any critics who you value their opinion because you know it's going to be the polar opposite of yours, and you kind of, you know, you I'm not necessarily looking for spite watching, but you know, do you have a critic where if you know they say they won't like something, you know that you will? So yeah, sound off in the comments, and let's hear from you. And so with that, we're going to move right into our Ask a Geek questions here. So let's see. We got a few questions here. Okay. All right. Here's a really neat question. And this is to all of us. So it's really just, but there's only two of us here to answer it. And the question is, what is something that you would consider a masterpiece in your chosen medium? So, Brian, I'm interested to ask, what is a comic or graphic novel that you would consider a masterpiece?
All-Star Superman comes to mind.
Oh, yeah.
I would say All-Star Superman, possibly New Frontier, because I really like New Frontier. it has everything that you can possibly want from a comic.
Okay, so now I've read All-Star Superman, so I know what you're talking about. But for those who don't know, why do you hold All-Star Superman in such high regard?
It's a book that resonates with every best aspect of the character of Superman, that is written and so well and has been drawn so well. The stories, because there's a couple of different stories, are so well put together. I feel like it could possibly change people's lives, for the better. Like, that's how high up I put the All-Star Superman up there, because it's the whole concept of, he does good because it's the right thing to do, kind of thing. I know it sounds cheesy in our cynical day and age, but that's really one of the reasons.
Yeah, there are definitely some very powerful moments in there. And the thing that I really like about it, having read it myself, is that so many of its greatest moments, they're not like over the top, sort of, ham-fisted or, kind of over the top scenes like you would expect in the comic book, but they're really, the whole book is really kind of understated. Like, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Which gives it kind of an honesty, I suppose, that you don't really see in a whole lot of comic book narratives, if that makes any sense.
I mean, I guess, well, let's go with that, because I'm not sure exactly the word, what you're trying, like the word you're looking for either.
Well, it's like, okay, you'll read a story where, it's pretty clear that it's just trying to emotionally manipulate you, like John would put it. Like, okay, like everything about the scene is like, okay, this is a sad scene. You should feel sad. Why aren't you feeling sad? And it just piles the emotional manipulation on you. I never felt like anything in All-Star Superman was, trying to manipulate emotionally. And so, the emotional reactions that those moments did get from me in the book were, much more effective as a result, because it was just telling me a good story and not trying to manipulate me to feel a certain way.
Right. No, I get you with that. Yeah, it's genuine. What you're looking for, the word is genuine.
Yes, that's it. Genuine.
Yes.
Yeah, my thesaurus is still packed up from the move, so.
The thesaurus is supposed to be in your head. No, not mine.
Please, my mind is a swirling miasma.
Wait, hold on. Who still uses a thesaurus in the age of Google?
I like to do some things the old-fashioned way. Sue me. I still write letters on paper with a quill and ink.
Okay, so, you know what I do? I hit a button, and it goes boop, and it's delivered.
Okay. Now you also mentioned New Frontier. Why do you hold that in such high regard?
So New Frontier is it's basically, New Frontier is a love letter to like Silver Age comics, basically, and it was Darwin. It's like Darwin Cook. So again, I'm a huge just fan of Darwin Cook. So this was his like sort of epic storytelling of like the comics that he sort of grew up with and so forth. So you get to see kind of like the more fun side of the Silver Age, the kind of the wacky ideas about it. It's a comic book if that makes any real sense to it. And it's just a good read is what it is. So like, I don't think I've met a single person who has talked ill of New Frontier. So like that's another one. And that's I'm gonna leave it at those two, and I kind of want to see if anyone in the comments might have something else, but like those are my two picks.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess now I've got to come up with two video games. Okay.
It doesn't have to be two.
Well, I'll tell you what. We've actually had one come out just this year that I think qualifies for the title of masterpiece, and that's Nier Automata, which is I find it to be brilliant on just about every single level. It's mechanically it's brilliantly designed, especially in how in its early stages where the first 30 minutes or so are I like to call those the teaching moments where you're actually learning how to play the game. And it's usually where you get a whole bunch of pop-up windows like, oh, here's how you do this and here's how you do this. But you don't have that in Nier Automata. Everything is taught to you naturally. And you learn just through basic experimentation. Everything flows very naturally. Visually, it's one of the most impressive games I've ever played. The score, the music to this game is just phenomenal. I would call I'm prepared to call the composer of Nier Automata the John Williams of video games, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise. And then there's also just narratively, I think it's not just the story it tries to tell, but how it tells it. It's a game that plays not just with narrative tropes, but with the nature of narrative itself. Because it's one of those games where you've got to play through it multiple times to get the true story, and every time you play it through, the story changes in some way to toss aside what you think you knew about what was going on in this world. So it's a game that toys around not just with what story it's telling, but also the nature of storytelling itself. And I'm prepared to say that this is Yoko Taro's masterpiece. Another one that I would consider to be a masterpiece, and this is one I've talked about before in the show, and that's Spec Ops: The Line, which it's a very that one's that one is a little bit more of a conventional method of storytelling than Nier Automata, but its story and how it provides its commentary on modern warfare games. I've yet to see a more damning indictment of the modern war genre and the types of player responses that they can elicit than Spec Ops: The Line. And it's one of those games that I've said for years, like, it's one of those games where if people say that, games they can't tell stories on the same level as movies or books, I say, no, you sit down and you play this game, and then you come back and see if you can say the same thing to me later. So yeah, Nier Automata and Spec Ops: The Line are two games that I would call masterpieces of the medium. So yeah.
I always feel bad about people asking about masterpieces of video games, because video games has a disadvantage that it could still be like a good story and things like that, but it doesn't play well. You can't get it out I'm not sure if you can't because you can't read a book wrong. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but
you just dodged a bullet there. You're like,
did I dodge a bullet? Where?
Well, you were
over there. Is that what's in that wall?
When you start up and it's like video games are a disadvantage. It's like, oh, you're gonna fight, and they're like, because you can't read a book wrong. I was like, okay, all right, yeah, put the gun down.
It's just that's sort of one of the reasons that you can have all this well put together, but it still has to play well, and that's the huge, not the huge like I said, kind of a disadvantage that games have, which makes me feel bad because some really great games out there, really great stories that it's like, oh, this is really, really cool if I can make my character do what he's supposed to do.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same way with video games are very young medium, so I'd say they're kind of going through the same growing pains that comic books went through, where the older generation's like, oh, comic books can never be on the same level as as novels, because they're just they rely too much on fantastical characters, and with the pictures you don't have to use your imagination at all. Yeah, so it's every medium has to work with its advantages and disadvantages. If that makes any sense. Okay. And let's see here now. And all right. And we got a question here. That first question was from Eric, and this next one here is from Lance. And he asks a question to you, Brian. And his question is, what are your thoughts on the CB Cebulski Akira Yama? He's misspelled.
Akira? I believe it's Akira.
Yeah, he's misspelled it. I think he typed this on a mobile phone because the grammar is atrocious.
Well, yeah, that'll tend to happen. But please make sure you're not texting while driving.
I'm gonna feel really bad for answering the question while he's wrapped around a tree.
Let's hope not. But what to explain everything else is that it might have been yesterday, and then the news kind of broke yesterday, but it's more being spread around today as we're recording this, that the new editor-in-chief of Marvel, CB, how do you say his last name again?
Cebulski. I think we decided we were just going to call him CB Nice Guy.
Yeah. It come out that back in the 2000s, he was using a synonym to write stories for Marvel, Dark Horse, and I think at the time Dreamwave, when Dreamwave still existed. Remember Dreamwave, guys? Don't.
They had the Transformers license for all of 30 seconds.
No, it was like a year, but then they flushed it down the toilet because Pat Lee decided to go buy a Lamborghini or some bullshit like that. No,
Well,
news for another day.
Yeah.
So which now you're asking, like, that's not the problem. Like, people have used different, have used assumed names and stuff like that to write stories. He was kind of doing it to subvert some Marvel regulation that you could not be an editor and write unless you got a special okay from someone higher up. So he then started writing stories as Akira Yoshida. I believe that's how you pronounce it.
I'm digging up the article now. It was
it's Akira
Yoshida.
Yoshida. And unfortunately, that means he was also pretending to be a person of Japanese origin.
Well, we should clarify. He wasn't just using a Japanese name. He was actively pretending to be a Japanese person, because there's actually interviews where he's actually playing up the Yoshida character.
Yeah, there's interviews about him doing that, and they for years have said they're two, because there was a rumor a while, but everyone said no, they're two different people. They're two different people, and and eventually the Akira just sort of fell off the map because he'd stopped using it and stopped writing it. And now he's come out and said, yes, that was me. I was writing about that. And that's when shit sort of hits the fan in this story, where how long Marvel knew, and then Marvel still sort of like okayed him becoming the new editor in chief. And this fact he was I mean, again, he's a nice guy, but he's also huge and white, pretending to be a Japanese person, which is not really cool in any way, shape, or form. So you have that problem going for you. So I don't know how really to digest the story, other than it made me go, huh? Very, like, I was sort of confused when I was reading over the articles with it. So and it's a black eye for Marvel right now, because they were big on, they're changing over creative controls. They're trying to move everything because their sales have not been doing so well. They've not had really good PR for last year or so. So this is our time to start fresh. And the moment they start fresh, this news drops. So then it's kind of like, well, shit, like what else can happen now? Let's not ask that question, because something bad is going to happen. So yeah. I don't know. I don't like how, I don't necessarily agree with it, but at the same time, it happened back in 2000. It's now 2017. Like where's the statute of limitations? But it's a mess. It is a mess, is what it is. And
I think you would have been fine if it had just been a pen name.
Yes,
because there have been people who've taken foreign pen names before. I mean, hell, Pat Lee tried and failed to give himself a Japanese pen name that he tried to write. He basically tried to, if I'm saying, he tried to basically write his name out, thinking that the American alphabet, the Japanese alphabet, was just a straight 1-to-1 substitution, which he wound up with like this, something Funanana name that was just dumb as hell.
Right.
But he didn't try and play it up like he was himself a person of Japanese descent. So like, I feel like if all he had done, if all that, C.B. Cebulski had done would be just, he had taken the Japanese pen name and then that was it, then that would have been one thing. And that would be something that, people wouldn't have gotten up in arms. But the fact that he tried to play up that, he really was Akira Yoshida and he actually was Japanese, I think that's what's setting people over the edge.
And then the stories he pitched had, Japanese, like Japanese things behind them, trying to be more authentic and things like that. And that's also going to leave a lot of people with a bad taste in their mouth. So there's just there's not any good coming out of this. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Now, I asked this question before the show, and I'm going to ask again. Do you think that this is going to affect Cebulski's chances of being the editor-in-chief at Marvel? Or do you think that they've kind of committed themselves now and they're just going to take it on the chin?
Yeah, I think it's been a commitment now. Like they're gonna take the shot, move forward. They've already, they brought him in because he was international in China. They brought him back from China. That's a huge financial investment. They've promoted him. They've put press releases out. So I think they're just going to take it on the chin and try to go forward with it. Yeah. But let's put it this way: if something were to happen, I might not be surprised, but I don't think anything's going to happen. I'm pretty sure he's going to be the editor-in-chief for a little bit. Maybe not as long as they wanted, but he will be the editor-in-chief.
Okay, all right. And he's got another question here for you. The question is have you played Season 2 of the Telltale Batman series?
I haven't even played Season 1 of the Telltale Batman series. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm a bad fan. But I get busy, and when I get busy, unfortunately, certain things have to take a wayside, and one of those things is sometimes playing video games. I know that's the most adult thing I've said in the last 2 weeks. I feel really sad that I've said that out loud. But yeah, unfortunately, I haven't played Season 1, and I have not played Season 2 yet.
Oh well, I'm not. I'm going to shut up then because I have played through Season 1, and I'll say you'll like it, but you're definitely going to raise your eyebrows at some of the liberties it takes with the Batman mythos.
Maybe. Now, did you play it as like normal Batman, or did you play as the goddamn Batman?
It's pretty much the normal Batman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apparently, you can play him up as the goddamn Batman from All-Star Batman and Robin. I'm just like, holy shit, really?
I didn't see an opportunity to do that.
That's why there's replayability.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, definitely check it out over the holiday break. I think you'll enjoy it. Ow. Oh God. All right. Close Facebook so that doesn't go off in my ears again. Okay. And let's see. Okay, so that's about all the Ask the Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. And occasionally we do trawl through our YouTube comments looking for questions, so feel free to leave your questions there as well. And so with that, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes portion of this discussion, and that's the Netflix Punisher series, which, oh my God, it's a culmination of a dream come true because, and if Kat were here, she would back me up. I am a huge Punisher fan. And I have been praying, I've been praying and getting on, and sitting on every mall Santa's knee and asking for a Punisher television series. And now Netflix has delivered. And so we're gonna go ahead and break that down and start talking about the Netflix Punisher. So Brian, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you so that you can give sort of a brief background of this series, because I know that if I do, I'm never gonna shut up about it. So, well,
I need to put out there that there will be spoilers, of course, but also I haven't finished.
We need a siren that goes off whenever we give that warning. We need a spoiler warning siren,
right? But at the same time, I haven't finished the series, so I don't. I can give general assessments and knowledge and things like that, but in terms of I just want to get that out there. If it sounds like, hey, Brian doesn't know what he's talking about because he hasn't finished the series yet.
Well, I have, and I'm going to tell you right now, if you get spoiled, that's on you.
Well, I have that. I knew that walking in.
So, but anyway, why don't you start by giving the two listeners who don't know what we're talking about a brief background on the Punisher character.
So the Punisher character is a vigilante character from Marvel Comics. He's had 2 movies. An okay one and a not okay one. Okay, 3 movies. I forgot about Dolph Lundgren, which I've never actually seen. I have to change that sometime.
Oh, if you have a night and you're willing to get yourself a little drunk, it's a blast to watch. It really is.
Right. So the Punisher is a character that he's usually a soldier. It could have been he's from Vietnam. They've sort of updated him now as more of the Afghan Iraq war and things like that. But he's a soldier that comes back home to his wife and kids and has a good time. But at one point in time, he suffers the tragedy that his entire family is murdered in front of him. This sort of breaks him, and then he becomes the Punisher, where he will go about and basically first thing he ever wanted to do is just extract revenge on whoever killed his family. After that, he sort of moves and sort of attract and goes after a lot of the killers and the under, and at the time he's usually just sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Not mafia, but mafia people. So underground crime and stuff like that. Street level crime. And he does so when it's Punisher is just he does so by killing them. He's a straight up vigilante. So So and we met this character in season 2 of Daredevil.
Yeah, which I did not see. I'll probably step in here because, like I said, I've been a huge fan of the Punisher. Followed the books for a number of years. To me, the Punisher was best written in the 2000s under the Max imprint by Garth Ennis, which is why this series kind of irritated me on the outset with the first time I saw the opening credits, and they didn't list Garth Ennis's name because they took a lot of cues from his stories. And I'm like, there should be another name here, but there isn't.
Check. I might have to check the back end credits. I've sort of criticized some of the credits before that they have not given the proper credits to proper creators on these Netflix shows, because I know they've credited Jerry Conway because he created the character, but you were correct. Garth Ennis definitely brought him back. He brought him back. Welcome back, Frank, which they say in the show. I'm like,
yeah, but this series takes a lot of cues from Garth Ennis's Max stories. And that's why I said I'm really irritated that I didn't see Garth Ennis's name anywhere in the credits. Now, I will say, just as my general thoughts on the series does something, and again, I'm just speaking based on this series itself. I'm not speaking about, this character as he appeared in Daredevil season 2, because like I said, I haven't seen that. I can't speak to it righteously. But one thing that I have noticed that this series does that I've never seen done even by Garth Ennis, and that's that it makes Frank into a character. Because in a typical Punisher story, he's written closer to like the Predator or the Terminator. He's a force of the world, and the stories are more about the people that he's after and the people who are trying to stop him reacting to him and what he does. It's sort of similar to how, like Hitman, like the story is less about him and more about about other people reacting to him. Whereas in this series, Frank Castle actually gets a character arc, and it's an unusual take on the character but it's one that was very refreshing and one that I really enjoyed. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, because for me, like, first off, when I started watching the show, I mentioned last week that I was not doing well, like, mentally. So when I wasn't doing well mentally, this is probably not a show you should watch when you're feeling a bit down and depressed, because, man, it will drag you with it. But I will go on record saying that the first episode, where it was just a life in the day of Frank Castle and dealing with the post stress that comes from losing your entire world in your family, even though you have gotten revenge for it, but you're still going to be suffering from it. Like that, I thought was a fantastic episode. I thought this is where I thought it was going to go. It was just be the follow his life sort of thing, and maybe something would happen again that leads him to become the Punisher, which kind of does. But I felt like after that first episode, and the pacing problems sometimes with these Netflix shows bother me, is it went from, all right, we've gotten that, everything's set up. Now it's going to time to introduce the rest of these cast and of these characters and all these other people I don't care as much about, nor do I like a lot. And so for me, at least, it got better as it went on, because you had to build these characters up. But for a while, I was just like, I don't care about this micro character. I don't care. Like, everyone's an asshole here. Like, who am I supposed to root for?
Well, yeah, like, I agree. Like, this is like, that was something that kind of threw me for that. I was like, okay, well, this is expected to see, because, given the nature of the Punisher and his stories, you're not going to see a whole lot of paragons of moral virtue in a Punisher story.
And for Frank himself, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, that's absolutely fine. He's not supposed to be likable, but he's supposed to be sympathetic. And that's what I got from the first episode.
But what surprised me was that, because like I was in the same boat as you, I was like, okay, it's a show full of assholes. I was okay with that, because again, Punisher story, that's what you're going to get. But then as the series went on and you started to get into the heads of some of the characters, which we'll get into later, we're not, I started to get much more sympathetic to these characters because, the series wasn't just a typical, like I said, it wasn't a typical Punisher story in that it wasn't just Frank, drawing out his plan on how he's going to kill everybody and then going and killing everybody. We actually got to see the circumstances that brought these characters to this point and how they're reacting and how the situation is making them feel, which again is not something you get in a typical Punisher story. So, but I guess that brings us down to our discussion of the plot of this series, which since I finished it, I'll go ahead and elaborate on that. So the story basically spins off of Frank Castle's arc in Daredevil Season 2. He's already killed Colonel Schoonover, who he believes was the mastermind behind his family's murder. But in the second episode, he's contacted by David Lieberman, a.k.a. Micro, who is also on the run from the government. And he informs Frank that there was actually a much bigger picture to the story than what Frank believed, and that involves events and characters that stretch all the way back to Frank's service in the War on Terror. And Frank discovers that the true masterminds of his family's death are still out there, and so he joins forces with Micro, who's on the run from the government and hiding from his family, to keep them safe, to try and not only get their vengeance on these people, but on these CIA people, but also to make it so that David can go back to his family, and basically this whole conspiracy can be exposed. Meanwhile, we have Dina Madani, who is a Department of Homeland Security agent fresh from Afghanistan, who has come back to New York City investigating the death of her partner, who was killed in a CIA black op in Afghanistan. And she discovers over the course of this that the key to her investigation is, in fact, Frank Castle, who was actually present when her partner was murdered. And it's eventually discovered that the information that Micro wants to expose, the people that Frank wants to kill, and the people who killed Madani's partner are all one and the same person, a CIA agent named William Rawlins, who is a character taken straight from Ennis's books. One of many things taken straight from Ennis's books, and that he's working alongside Billy Russo, who served alongside Frank Castle in Afghanistan. And so the story is about these three sides coming up, this triangle of protagonists going up against this government conspiracy, and how they react to each other and how they try and work out how they can bring these people to justice while still giving everybody what they want. Now, at the same time that's going on, and this is where we get to my first major criticism of the Punisher. There's a subplot that deals one of the themes of this series is veterans coming back from war and dealing with PTSD, and how the country, not to get political about it, but how veterans returning from war don't necessarily get the best treatment when they come back. They can be kind of forgotten. And there's one returning veteran, who's in this therapy group that's run by Castle's friend Curtis, who he goes off the deep end and goes full alt-right and becomes a terrorist to try and prove some nebulous point that honestly I could never really understand what he was trying to prove. That whole storyline with Lewis felt very sort of tacked on at the last minute, because ultimately it didn't really do anything to serve the greater narrative. It kind of felt like this was one of that whole subplot felt like one of the writers like, okay, I have something to say about veterans and PTSD, and he just kind of shoved it in because to me the theme of how a veteran deals with post-traumatic stress disorder, I felt ran very well through the characters of Frank and Curtis, and how they both, with both of them being veterans and having both suffered because of war, Frank losing his family, Curtis losing his leg. I felt like that was a very interesting sort of portrayal. And I felt like the whole thing with Lewis was just kind of tacked on. And if I can say, I honestly kind of felt like if I were a vet, I'd kind of find it a little insulting. But
I mean, it's one of the. I think that it was a little bit tacked, but I'll give him credit is that when you're dealing with the Punisher, who he himself suffering from those issues, it's something you really can't walk away from and look away from, and not to mention the fact gun control laws, domestic terrorism, and things like that are news. They've been the news for several years. We don't like it because it's a horrific events back to back. So I think what they were wanting to do is try to bring that up a bit, maybe kind of put a spotlight on it. And you could be right. It could be just they didn't have the right feel for it. Maybe they didn't have the right knowledge about it. But I would rather a show like this, Punisher, like this is a character that would deal with that. So I don't mind them trying to bring it in, but you're correct. It could be done a bit more carefully.
Oh, I agree that the Punisher would be a perfect character to deal with it, but like that's the kind of thing. Like if you're going to do that, honestly, I felt like that whole story arc would have been better served as a central focus with its own, like for season 2, rather than being just kind of stuck onto this one.
And I can agree with that, and that's I criticized Daredevil season 2 with, where the main story I thought was great. The side story, that showed up with the hand slowed the thing down. So it's just sort of a common symptom with the shows where it'll bring it down a little bit, but maybe not. And for the most part, it doesn't stop, I would say, the, I guess, overall enjoyment, depending on if you enjoyed it or not.
So,
and even for a show, because they're 13 episodes, I feel like, maybe like, we need some subplot. We can't use all 13 episodes for one plot. I'm like, no, you actually can. That's not a bad episode count for one plot. Yeah. Especially one where, like you said, it's a triangular conspiracy. It makes you go, huh?
Yeah, it's like, okay, a friend of mine described it as like, trying to add a fourth Triforce. It's like you've got power, wisdom, and courage, but then you got this fourth thing that's kind of sitting off to the side here. So we've got these three plots that are already running, and then we got this fourth plot with Lewis going Second Amendment gun crazy. It's like, okay, this doesn't fit. So, which I suppose that brings us to well, I mean, I've already given my general thoughts on the series, talked about the plot. So what about you? What are your general?
It got better as the episodes went on, for me anyway, because I felt like after like I said, the first one I thought was excellent, and then you started getting introducing the new characters, introducing the new the new plot lines going forward on these, and getting all that stuff. I thought bogged it down really quick again. But by the time I got to about episode 8, I believe was the last time. Episode 8 was the last episode that I had watched. So I'm getting close to Endgame here. Okay. It was getting better. Like, I liked where everything was coming up. I liked where it wasn't not necessarily shoot 'em up, pow, pow, that you expect the Punisher to be. But at the same time, I knew that was going to be coming because that's the Punisher. Yeah. So I never got to that point, but I'm kind of glad that they were trying to slow burn into that, because it could be something that can be really overdone, and really, just you kind of get desensitized to it.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I was reading some of the comments, not comments, but like some of the criticism, like, I can't believe this show is so violent. It's like, you have no fucking idea what this character is, do you?
Yeah.
I'm like, read a goddamn book.
Yeah, and the thing is like, what surprised me was how little actual shooting there really is. Now, like the last 3 episodes go all the fuck out, and I will say this: they save the best for last. Although I will say there are some points where if you're squeamish, you may want to wait until you may not want to watch this just after some of these episodes just after you've eaten. But what I really like is this series managed to, like I said, it took the Punisher, which is normally not a very character-driven series, and it focused on the characters. And I'll tell you, the 2 sort of character arcs that I thought were really compelling were the whole subplot with Micro's family. In the show, Frank actually gets hit in an attempt to get to Micro. He kind of pulls a Marty McFly, and he throws himself in front of Mrs. Lieberman's car and kind of ingratiates himself into Micro's family. At first, he does it just as a way to stick it to Micro, because he thinks that Micro's trying to, pull a fast one on him. But then eventually,
in all
fairness, he was.
Yes.
Yeah. But then eventually he becomes sort of Lieberman's instrument in helping he becomes Micro's instrument in helping Micro's family out, and kind of he becomes sort of a proxy carer for them, kind of to do things to help the family that Micro himself cannot, because he can't reveal himself to them, because he'd put them in danger. And it causes a bit of drama, because you kind of see this sort of where the Punisher, Frank is able to be there and do things with Micro's wife and his kids that Micro himself can't do, and all Micro can do is just sit back and watch. And there's a moment where, I guess in a fit of grief, Micro's wife up and kisses Frank, and Micro's watching this, and I'm just like, oh, this is going to be a shit pickle when Frank gets back.
And again, in his defense, she had been drinking some wine.
Yeah. But but like, you watch these scenes where Micro's watching his family, and I got to give the actor props. You can see just like the anguish on his face. Like, he so wants to be there himself, but he can't. And it's heartbreaking to watch. And then the other arc that I thought was really cool was Dina Madani's, who, when she arrives, they pull a nice bait and switch with her. When she first arrives, she's played off like the stereotypical, all business ice bitch. But then you kind of as the series goes on, and you see what brought her to this stage, and you see her kind of realize, okay, all right, I can't do this myself. I need some help. And eventually, she needs to get to the Punisher and get the information that he has. And at one point, I think she's also trying to arrest him, but she also makes an effort to understand that, okay, you know what, this guy is damaged too. I can't go at him I can't go at these people just like any other perp, because they deserve justice just as much as I do, and just as much as my dead partner does.
Yeah.
And now we'll say there was a bit of missed opportunity there, because eventually it's revealed that Frank himself was the one who pulled the trigger on her partner. And I thought that there was a great opportunity for some interpersonal drama between the two characters, but it's never really, it's kind of talked about once and then just kind of dropped.
It could be one of those things they might be trying to save up for a season 2. And we'll get to season 2 and possible season 2s a little bit later, because there's some issues right now with Disney and Netflix that we'll probably talk about. But no, and it was kind of interesting about her character. I'm not sure if it, for me, was like, she was the smartest person in the room, but she didn't have to force it on anyone. Everyone just sort of already kind of knew that. So I like that character. Like, she didn't have to prove herself. She's already proven herself, and people go, okay, let's, you're in charge. Let's do it. So my fear was that was going to be that arc. Like, I have to prove myself to find it. She's like, no, I've already done that. Fuck you people. Yeah.
And I kind of, I got the sense that the character herself sort of had that, like, I kind of felt like when she came in, she felt like she had to be the stereotypical ice queen, but then like all the other characters, like, no, you're in charge. You point, we'll go. We got no problem with that. And it's like, oh, okay. Because you remember, like, the whole like the first, I think like the first 4 episodes, her partner is like, okay, you don't need to put up a shield here. We're here to help you.
Yeah, like, this is our job. You're our boss.
So,
like, I feel like I'm dying here. I'm just dying here. It's like, ooh, bad choice of words, sir.
So, so that's the plot. So let's move on a bit to the cast. John Bernthal. This is actually my first exposure to him as the Punisher. And I'll say I felt like he Thomas Jane will always be to me the greatest Punisher that ever was. But I will say that Bernthal did something that Jane never did, and that's he really made the Punisher feel like a person. You have the Punisher kind of stumbling over his words, and not really, he's not as eloquent and focused as the Punisher is in the comics, or as Jane was, where he's kind of almost like a machine. he really feels like he's a human being who's trying to process, this horrible situation. And the way that he can kind of swap back and forth between this hardened soldier and this broken man who is dealing not just with the post-traumatic stress of, what he did in the war, but also with the situation that he finds himself in now. And he lends the character an emotional depth that I've never seen before in The Punisher, especially in his interactions with Karen Page from Daredevil. Like I'm a Karen and Frank shipper now. I really am.
Oh, good Lord. I really don't want that to be a reality if that's the case. Like, no offense to your ship. You can go down with it if you will. But for me, I don't think the Punisher needs a love interest. Like, his love interest is the reason he's where he's at now.
Well, like, here's the thing. I don't really see her as a love interest. I really saw her as sort of like, not a love interest, a friend interest, I guess, is a friend interest. A friend interest. You get this sense in their interactions that the Punisher would love nothing more than to be able to open up to her and like have a genuine friend in his life, but because of what he does and who he is and the people who are after him, he knows he can't. But I really got the sense that, like, Karen's really the only person that he really trusts, and he wants so much to, have her friendship in his life, but he just can't because of his circumstances.
And again, yeah, there's definitely that. And for a while, because the whole thing is that everyone thought the Punisher was dead for the first half of this series. And then it gets outed like, oh, the Punisher's still alive. And so that's like a real big sort of revelation going forward, which would hopefully will resonate with the other series as well, because he still has unfinished business with Daredevil. And I'm kind of actually glad, because a lot of people said they were disappointed that why didn't the other Defenders show up in this series? If the other Defenders showed up in this series, it wouldn't be a story about Frank anymore.
Yeah.
So I would rather have this, at least for the first season, be a story about Frank. And John definitely, he's a scary dude. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, he is a scary looking guy.
But then you see him like in his flashbacks, it's like, oh, I love my wife. She got me Springsteen tickets. And I was like, he's also a human being.
Yeah. He's from New York. He got Springsteen tickets. I'm like, oh my God, you're such a New Yorker.
I'll tell you another casting choice that I thought was inspired was Amber Reva as Dina Madani. She knocked it out of the park with that role. Like, I can't think of aside from that, like I said, those first few minutes where she was playing up the ice bitch persona. Aside from that, those first minutes, I can't think of a single complaint I have about her performance. She was great.
Yeah, and not only that, there is still a sense of vulnerability with her. Like, when her partner does get killed by the guy she was fucking. Spoiler. Am I pretty now? That's the line you're gonna give? Okay.
who I'm calling it now. If they do a second season, Billy Russo is going to be Jigsaw.
Someone showed me the video of him getting his ass beaten in the hospital. He's obviously Jigsaw. He is obviously Jigsaw now. Just because like his face is going to be horrendously scarred, like Jigsaw's was.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot see him not being anything but Jigsaw.
Now, now Russo is a character that I felt kind of was very flat. I felt like he was just there to screw Madani and look pretty. You really get once you've watched the series, you really get a sense like the only reason he was there was just to set him up as an antagonist in season 2. I really felt like he was kind of extraneous.
A little bit I did not like the character, but when he shows up as the private army guy, he's like, I'm setting this up for all these veterans, and he has his little speech where obviously the speech was supposed to motivate and get control and get these guys all together, but like it was so bland and generic of the world doesn't, you're fighters and we go out and we fight, and I'm going to have you guys go and fight, and I'm going to say fight again. I was like, I don't see how these people can follow you now. Like, you're ridiculous.
Now, I'll tell you another a character that I thought was bland, but they really turned him around in the last few episodes, and that's Paul Schultz as William Rawlins, who, as I said, he's the character from the Ennis stories. For like the first 8 episodes, I'm watching this. I was like, really? He's the big bad? He's bland. He's a nobody. Why make him the villain? But then in the last few episodes, dude just goes effing berserk. Like he just goes complete. Like I would describe him as Agent Coulson without the moral code. Like he like in those last few episodes,
nothing like Agent Coulson.
he becomes
Agent Coulson is a walking moral code.
Yeah, Rollins becomes Coulson's evil twin in the last few episodes. He really does. Like just it. And the thing is, like, God, why couldn't you have been like this throughout the whole series? Like now you're becoming a villain. Like the first few times he appears in the show, I couldn't bring myself to hate him because there was nothing to him. But then as we get close to the end of the series and we see just how much of a fucking sadist he is, I'm like, yes, okay, this is what I want. Now I can hate you. Now I want you to die.
And again, that comes a little bit from the writing itself. Like there's always sort of a bit unevenness to it. But at the same time, you can always make the argument that, well, if he was like that from the beginning and lasting out that 13 or so episodes, like of you just wanting to hate him so much, you don't get, I guess, the same sense of reaction that you got. Like, oh my God, this guy actually is really dangerous. He is this evil. And then you get sort of that almost instant gratification once he's gone. You're like, yes, this is what I wanted. Otherwise, it could just drag itself out.
Well, I mean, that's what I felt happened here. Was like, okay, Frank is going after the head of this conspiracy. All right, well, who's the head of the conspiracy? We don't find out until I think like episode 6 that it's Rollins. And even then it's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, what he's doing, what he did in Afghanistan, yeah, that was scummy and wrong, but he's not behaving like anything other than a typical, CIA agent does in movies. Okay, there's nothing especially noteworthy about him. It's not until, like I said, those last couple episodes that they really kind of turn him loose. And I'm just like, okay, yes, now he's an asshole. Now I want him to go. And I feel like that, I get that they were trying to save the best for last, but the problem with that is you've got to give us a taste of what's to come. You can't just, especially for, that may work in a film, but in a television series, you got to give us a breadcrumb path to follow. And they didn't do that with him in this series.
So, okay. I think that's a perfectly valid reason then. Yeah.
Yeah. So, were there any other standouts for you in the cast that you'd like to talk about?
I mean, not really. Again, I still have to. I have to go. I have to go through it. The finish, basically. We haven't really talked too much about Micro, because he was kind of a dirty character. Like I didn't like him at all, even when like he was spying on his family, and I realized he was going through trouble, but at the same time, you're spying on your family. I just did not really like what he was or like what he represented, and like trying to you're not going to trick the Punisher.
Yeah.
Stop trying.
Micro's another character who's a slow burn. He doesn't really start becoming really sympathetic and likable until after about like episode 8 or so, where he really gets to open up about what this whole situation is doing to him. Before that, he's basically just there to piss off Frank, which that has some great moments. I would describe Frank and Micro's relationship as the odd couple from hell in this series, because like they start out just fucking hating each other. There was
a cute moment in the van when he's eating his like tuna
sandwich.
He's like, where'd you get that? I'm like, I made it. Did you make me one? No.
and Frank's like, motherfucker didn't make me a sandwich.
He's just eating his tuna.
But yeah, it really isn't until like episode 9 or so that we really get to see Micro open up.
That was the episode that I was a little worried about, because Punisher pulls a knife on a kid.
Yeah, that was a little out there.
I mean, that was a big moment. I went like, "Oh, show! What are we doing?" And then the kid's like, and then you see where it came, but you see the sort of results from it. Like, okay, the kid's hurting. He doesn't know how to respond, so the Punisher's helping him move along and so forth like that. And then they're throwing the football in the street, and I was like, this giant dude just pulled a knife on you like 15 minutes earlier. Now you're best friends. New York's weird.
I tell you another character that I got to give props to, and that's Jason Moore as Curtis Hoyle, who, you know, he doesn't really, as far as the larger plot against Rollins goes, he just kind of flits in and out of it. But as far as exploring the theme of post-traumatic stress and how it affects soldiers, I feel like he was a really effective character. And the way that he kind of serves as Frank's conscience in a real sense,
Mm-hmm.
not conscience, that's not really the word I'm looking for. Sort of an anchor to the real world. You really get the sense like he really is trying everything he can. Yeah, he's keeping Frank's secret as the Punisher, but he also really wants him to kind of get away from that life and start focusing on healing and basically getting himself back into a healthy headspace. And he really sold that role. I was almost getting teary-eyed at the point where Frank confesses that I was the reason you lost your leg in Afghanistan. And I was I was almost teary-eyed at that point, because it's like, I can't imagine that kind of being in that kind of situation or having to deal with that, and then to find out that the whole reason it happened was because someone that I trusted was asleep at the switch. And I feel like Jason Moore really just sold that role, and I would love for him to come back in season 2, especially given the ending of season 1, where we see Frank, after everything is said and done, actually going to a therapy group and talking about how, like, for the first time in my life, I don't have a war to fight, and that scares the hell out of me.
Right, yeah. And war sometimes will find the Punisher. Punisher won't find the war.
Yeah.
That's the tragic side of that character. And that kind of that's what I'm scared about, though, because so you mentioned season 2, and we were talking about like what's going to happen in season 2. They'll have Jigsaw, maybe these characters coming back, Karen and things like that, the Marvel Defenders. But like in the future, we know that Netflix is going to lose these series because Disney's is going to make their own.
Well, I've heard
service.
I've heard conflicting stories. I've heard two versions of the story. The first story I've heard is that Netflix is going to lose all the licenses, and that's going to be the end of it. The other story I've heard is that Disney is going to start their own streaming service, and they're going to start up new series over there, but Netflix is going to keep the existing licenses that they have. So from everything I've heard, everything's still kind of up in the air.
I'm not sure how I feel about that, like that second one, because then you're going to have a Netflix sort of series universe, and Disney, whatever the Disney streaming service is going to be called, like series, and like I feel like that's going to cause issues more than it's going to solve issues.
Yeah, but I will say, from a narrative standpoint, if they didn't do a season 2 of The Punisher and left it alone, especially given that the ending of this series with Frank in therapy, I feel like that if they didn't do a season 2, I would be satisfied with this, because Castle got a pretty satisfying character arc in this series. And the thing is like, in order for he got the revenge, he's on a path of healing, and in order for them to do a season 2, they've got to kick the legs out from under him again. So, which I don't see how I don't know how they can do a Punisher series 2 without knocking Frank down from where he's built himself up to in this series. If that makes sense.
I mean, it's a very good question. Like, now you also have to remember he is still a vigilante. Like, he is still wanted.
Well,
so
not at the end of this series. They give him a get out of jail free card.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Did they fake his death again?
No, the CIA says basically, to spoil it, the CIA director discovers Rollins is a weasel, and after he gets killed, the CIA director is like, "Okay, look, we can't have this shit get out, but you did us a solid by cleaning up our mess. So, okay, you know what? Here you go, fresh start. Frank Castle's dead. Long live Pete Castiglione."
Well, I'll be. So you never know. Maybe it could be a solid ending. But yeah, they would have to definitely try to do something to bring him back out into the limelight.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe he could be a supporting character in one of the other shows or something like that, or like Defender season 2 or whatever. But
possibly. Now I will say there are some arcs that I would love to see them do in this series, especially with the tone that they've established.
Which ones are those?
I would love to see the Slavers arc, which dealt with Frank against human traffickers, which is possibly the darkest Punisher story ever written, but also one of, I think, the most important, because human trafficking is a thing, and it's definitely something that needs to be addressed and dealt with and fought. And I feel like, especially with the tone and the narrative tone they've set in this series, I feel like that would be a really great arc for them to do. I would love to see them do. Well, I think they did the Kitchen Irish arc in Daredevil season 2.
Yes,
or kind of touched on it. I would love to see Frank Castle go up against the Kingpin. That I feel like, I feel like that would, maybe he might team up. That might be something if he shows up in. That might be something they do if they do a Defenders season 2. Maybe he might show up as an ancillary character, and maybe he and the Defenders butt heads on how to bring down Wilson Fisk.
Right, and like Wilson Fisk has done something. That's where the legs were kicked out, and then it's like, all right, do we stop the Punisher or do we not stop the Punisher? Like that could be like their dilemma. And Daredevil's like, you stop the fucking Punisher.
I would love to see them do Barracuda, who was one of the more memorable and one of the few recurring baddies in the Punisher series. You don't get a whole lot of recurring villains with the Punisher.
No, you don't. They're around for a while and then they're not.
I'll tell you, if they decide to have the Punisher go up against the Mob, they have to bring in Nikki Cavella, who was a capo in the Ennis stories, and who is probably one of the most sick and twisted people Frank has ever gone up against. So yeah, that I think those are some arcs that I'd like to see them explore. And of course, again, since they did it in this season, they probably won't. But if they're going to explore the gun control issue, I feel like that they should have done that in season 2 as opposed to tacking it onto this one.
Right, and there's, I guarantee there probably won't be. There will be probably another chance of that happening, because even though like I think reviews for some of this were kind of mixed, but like from what I've heard is I think it's doing well. So I would be. Every single Marvel has gotten a season 2 Netflix show. I'm pretty sure Punisher will probably get one too. I feel confident.
Wait, hang on. Jessica Jones and Iron Fist have both had their season 2s already?
Well, no, they're going to get their season.
Oh,
2.
okay.
Their season 2s have been announced, basically.
Okay, I was about to say, I knew I was behind, but damn, did I go into a coma at some point?
Not that far. No, not just yet. Not yet. Okay. So they've been announced. They haven't had it yet, but I feel like this with Punisher will also get a season 2 as well.
Well, assuming Disney doesn't yank it out from under them.
Well, that's true too. We don't know exactly where that's going for, and then you never know. It could be extremely successful. We can get Frankencastle.
If I could reach to the internet right now and slap you, I would.
Yeah, see, that's why I say things like this. It is my small entertainment every week is to make you slightly annoyed in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. All right. All right. So anyway, we're kind of running a bit long here, so let's wrapping things up. So let's give our final thoughts on the Punisher series. So Brian, what are your final thoughts on the Punisher season 1?
Well, from what I've seen, is it has a great start. Or a great first episode, very rocky episodes that kind of stagger after that. It's starting to get better, but I haven't finished it yet. But I should be able to. Let me put it that way. I'm looking forward to finishing it. So that means even though I haven't, I stopped watching, and I'm going to go back and complete the series. So that is a thumbs up in my book.
Okay, all right. I'll say, like I said, Thomas Jane will always be to me the ultimate Punisher. But Bernthal is definitely nipping at his heels, and this is definitely the best version of the Punisher I've seen, the best Punisher story I've seen on screen. And I hope they do more. I'd love to see them do more. Like I said, still annoyed they didn't credit Garth Ennis at any point in this series. But anyway, that's not a fight that I can win. And I'm definitely loved it, and it provides a much more human take on the Punisher than I've ever seen before. So anyway, this is the point of the show where we give our final rating on the show. So what do you think, Brian? Is this a see it now?
For me, since it's a Netflix show and it's bingeable, I would say it's a good like Saturday waster, like a good binge to watch on a Saturday afternoon. Not necessarily see it now, but a all right show to kind of continue on.
Okay. I'm gonna say the same thing. It's if you want to keep up with the Marvel stuff, it's definitely worth seeing. But it's definitely one that you've got to check your expectations at the door, because this series is, like I said, it's not a typical Punisher story. It's not what you typically expect from the character. So it's one of those ones where you've got to check your preconceptions at the door before you start watching it, which many reviewers failed to do.
Well, you never know. It happens.
Like Polygon.
Well, we talked about them before.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's about all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We're going to be taking a bit of a break for a couple of weeks as we go into our holiday break. Of course, it's our tradition every week we take December off so that we can enjoy the Christmas holidays and be with our families. However, we will be doing a special episode in mid-December for Star Wars The Last Jedi. So yeah, we'll definitely be back for that for our Star Wars holiday special. Yep, I made that joke. I went there. So we hope that you guys enjoy your holiday break, and we will see you guys when we come back. Thank you as always for tuning in. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
And I'm Brian.
All right, we'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.